today we are talking about how to validate someone's emotions. Now, if you're here, chances are someone has sent you this video being like, you need to learn how to validate emotions. And you might be wondering, why do I need to learn how to validate emotions? What is so great about validating emotions? What is even the point of it? Isn't that just mean I'm sitting in the mud with these emotions more? It's like not going to help anything. Validating emotions is so key to helping people move through those emotions and be in a less reactive state, including yourself. If you can validate your own emotions, man, like that is going to help you to not get so heightened and also to not feel so, in some cases, disconnected from your emotions. Because we can either feel hyper reactive or we can feel totally distant from our emotions. And neither of those is great for our relationships because both of those inhibit closeness with our partner, and even just kind of like a sense of intimacy with ourselves, even though that sounds kind of weird, but it's true. So I'm going to walk you through how to validate an emotion, and hopefully you can gain the skills that you need from this video to go back to your girlfriend or whoever sent you this video and be like, okay, I learned something and I know how to do this now. You're welcome. The first step to validating an emotion is to name that emotion. Now, you don't need to get this right. You don't need to name the exact correct emotion. Just the act of you trying to understand what this person is feeling is going to be helpful. And if you name an emotion that's not exactly right, what they'll do is they'll think, oh, does that sit with me? Does that fit? No, it's more like this emotion. And what you've done is you've let them know I'm here for you and I'm not afraid of you feeling this way. Because the most scary thing about having a big, uncomfortable emotion is not that we're having that emotion, it's that we're afraid it's going to repel everyone around us. It scares us, and we're afraid it's going to scare everyone else too. So, by starting the process of being like, ooh, it sounds like you're feeling this way, you're letting whoever you're talking to know that you're okay talking about this. You're making space for it, and it's okay with you. The other thing that it does is something called name it to tame it, which is when you name an emotion, you kind of contain it to this space that our brain can then manage. It's like if this emotion is just this big thing that's running wild in my body and in my brain, then it's scary. But if I know, oh, this emotion is sadness, then it's like, oh, it's sadness, it's contained. I know what sadness is. Your brain can kind of make sense of sadness, and it no longer feels as huge and as scary. So that's the very first step of validating an emotion, is to name it to tame it. And if you don't know the emotion, take your best guess. One of the things you can do if you're really into this and you really want to get some brownie points, one of the things you can do is print off like one of those emotion wheels so that you start to understand, or at least gain some exposure to the different words of emotions that could be going on with whoever you're talking to. Now, name it to tame it is really important if you're validating your own emotion, because when we name our own emotion, it does the same thing. It kind of helps our body like relax a little bit because now the emotion doesn't feel so out of control and so scary. So, step two of validating an emotion is to ask yourself, how does it make sense that this person is feeling this emotion? Now, listen, if it really doesn't make sense to you, and I've had so many couples where one partner will say, well, I'm just feeling this way, and the other partner will say, that's unreasonable. It is unreasonable to feel that way. I get it. It's not always possible to thoroughly understand why our partner is feeling a certain way. And if their feeling is that they're mad at us, that makes it even harder because we know that we didn't actively or intentionally do anything to try to hurt them. So it can be really challenging to say it makes sense that you feel this way when in your mind it doesn't make sense, and it also makes you feel like a bad person, right? So that's a caveat. This part can be more difficult to do when someone is saying that they're mad at you. But what you want to do in order to try to understand their perspective is just step into their shoes a little. Okay, so they're feeling upset. They're telling me that they're feeling upset because they think I don't care about them. I know I care about them, but if they feel like I don't care about them, I can understand why that would make them upset. Boo, you figured it out. Okay, So then you say something like, it makes sense that you feel this way. If you think that I'm not caring about you, then it makes total sense that you feel that way. I am caring about you, and I will talk to you more about that after, but for now, just know that I get it. I believe you, right? So some really important things to say here are things like, I believe you. And this is especially important like for our partner, but also for our kids. When we can really just say like, I believe you about their feelings, it helps them feel like, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. No matter who you're saying this to, partner or kids, any other human that you're saying this to is going to benefit from that, because one of our deepest fears is that there's something wrong with me. So by validating someone's emotions, you're first helping them process it by naming it to tame it, and then you're helping them normalize it. Like, it makes sense that you feel this way. Anyone would feel that way in your position. And I believe you when you say that it feels as big and bad as you say that it feels. This is helping to calm their deepest fears, that there's something wrong with me and nobody will believe me. And I will be isolated from everybody because I have this big, scary feeling. So, one of the reasons that we want to help validate someone's emotions is that it helps the emotion to move through them a lot more quickly than if we don't validate their emotions. If we ignore their emotions, dismiss their emotions, or argue with their emotions, all that does is it compounds more emotions onto the original emotion and therefore makes it bigger and less manageable. An emotion, if you don't mess with it, it will pass through your system in like 30 seconds to 2 minutes. It might keep reoccurring, but if you know how to pass it through your system, then you're not going to be scared of that, right? So an emotion will pass through your system really quickly if you're not adding more fuel to the fire. So what adds more fuel to the fire? Additional thoughts and feelings of guilt, of shame. There's something wrong with me because I have this emotion, of isolation. Nobody believes me, of feeling like a bad person. Oh, I'm so terrible for having this emotion. Oh, I'm so terrible for having this anger. I'm so terrible for having this like rage or fear or whatever it is. Anything that you add to that emotion that is, again, uncomfortable is going to just add more fuel to the fire and compound that emotion so that it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and is much less likely to pass through your system. I've had clients that have had stuck emotions for decades because they haven't had the support of someone to sit with them and validate that it makes sense that they feel this way and that there's nothing wrong with them. And then, of course, if you're providing comfort to whoever you're talking to, you can ask them, is there anything that I can do? Do you want me to just sit with you while you are upset? Do you want, I can just sit here, right? I can hold your hand if you want. You can ask them, or if you know them really well, you can just, and you know what they would like, you can just do that thing. But comfort and reassurance is key here. It's not about solving the problem, it's not about fixing the emotion. Because the thing is that when we allow these emotions to pass through our bodies, what we're essentially doing is giving our brain some space. We're providing a bit of space for clarity. And often, once the emotional reactivity has passed, and we feel supported in that, then we can actually move on to problem solving. And it doesn't take too long because when we have space in our brain, the solutions kind of come to us, right? So, really, you're helping them problem solve just by being there listening to them. Some important things to say are things like, I believe you. It makes sense that you feel this way. I'm here for you, right? Just basic stuff like that. You don't need to save them from this feeling, whether it's your partner or your kid or yourself, even for yourself. Now, this is a really important part of our own happiness journey. Validating your own feelings and accepting that you are where you are with your feelings is a really important part of relaxing your body enough so that you can move to that better feeling place. So, the way that you do this is exactly the same as I've just outlined it. Name it to tame it. Okay, what is this feeling? What is going on for me? Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it rage? Is it grief? Is it sadness? Is it loneliness? Like, what is this feeling that's inside of me? And so you name it, you kind of try on a few different things until you find one that kind of fits at least as good as it can, right? And then you normalize it. It's okay that I feel this way. It makes sense that I feel this way. Anyone would feel this way in my position. It's okay. right? And you let that emotion pass through your system. Now, it's possible that you get re-triggered again a couple minutes later, you do the exact same thing over and over again. What's great about this is that when you get into the space of validating your own emotions, it often allows us to not act from that emotionally reactive place. So if you're someone that tends to get triggered really easily, if you start this process of validating your emotions, and I would suggest doing this, when you're like in a calm state as well, just kind of going through the process, like, oh, okay, how am I feeling? Okay, I'm feeling calm. Okay, it makes sense that I'm feeling calm. You're just going through the process so that when you're heightened, you can more easily access those thoughts. When you're someone that gets reactive quite easily, if you get used to doing this process when you're upset, what happens is you start to reflect internally rather than expressing externally. So you can create a little bit of space and distance from yourself and the reactiveness. And what's great about that is that you might find that you're not doing those things that you tend to do when you're angry, that then tend to make you feel really guilty later on, because you're nurturing yourself rather than trying to change the situation so that you can feel better. You're working from the inside out rather than the outside in. And that is so super important for all of my hotheads out there, myself included. Okay, so we know the basic gist now of how to validate an emotion. Name it to tame it, and then normalize it. It makes sense. You're not crazy. This is like, I totally get it. You could even say something like, you know what? Like if it's your kids, you know what? When I was your age, I used to feel that way too. I just told my kid the other day, when I was your age, I used to get so mad at my mom. Yeah, I felt like she didn't like me. I felt like she wouldn't do the things I wanted her to do. It made me so mad, right? And my kid was like, yeah. And then she felt like I was joining in on her instead of her just being mad at me and me being like, oh, I don't like, it doesn't make sense that you feel this way, right? It's like a joining process. And so you can use that with your kids. I think that's like such a cool move to use with your kids. Like, yeah, when I was your age, I hated to brush my teeth too. And I would get so mad at my dad when he would tell me to brush my teeth, you know? So now that you know kind of the basics of how to validate an emotion, let's do the hard work, the really hard happiness work of figuring out what is going on for you when this happens. Because I know I make it sound super easy, like just name the emotion, like normalize it, no big deal. But I also know that when someone has a big emotion, it can create a big emotion in you. And that is often what we tend to run away from or fight against. It's our own big emotions that come from the reaction to someone else's big emotions. So let's do that work right now. Get out your journal, your sheet of paper, whatever you have, get it out, and let's start with a few questions, okay? The first question is, what happens inside of me when I feel a big emotion? Do I allow it or do I push it away? Do I get mad at myself? Do I distract myself? What happens inside of me? Does it feel overwhelming? Do I get scared? What happens inside of me when I feel a big emotion? The next question is, what happens inside me when I see someone else having a big emotion? When I see someone else having a big reaction? What happens inside of me? Do I want to run away? Do I want to get mad at them? Do I freeze and have no idea what to do? Like, what happens inside of me when someone else has a big emotion? The next question is, how did my family react to big emotions, either mine or someone else's? Did they make space for it? Did they talk about it? Or did they run away from it? Did they isolate that person? How did my family react, or my caregivers, or my siblings, my friends? How did the people around me react to big, strong emotions when I was growing up? This can give you a huge insight into why you react the way that you do, because the way our family and the people we surrounded ourselves with growing up reacted to us or someone else having a big emotion often shapes a belief about emotions. Emotions are scary. Emotions will isolate us. Emotions are to be avoided, whatever it is. The next question is, how do I notice myself coping with stress, uncertainty, worry, anger, whatever it is? Do I eat? Do I drink? Do I watch TV? Do I gamble? Do I smoke? Do I distract myself in some way, shape, or form? Or do I sit with it? Do I allow it? Do I wallow in it? How do I notice myself reacting to my own stress, uncertainty, worry, fear? So that is all the work I have for you today. I hope that was helpful. I hope you learned a new skill, how to validate emotions, such an important skill to have. If this video was helpful, forward it to your friends who might also need help learning how to validate emotions. It is simple, but it's challenging to do. And so the more you practice, the better. Here at the Get Happy Club, we are all about helping you to feel better and having an accountability partner in doing the hard work of feeling better. Because in order to train our brains to think in a different way, to focus on more positive things, and even just to be able to relax a little instead of getting heightened all the time, in order to do that, we need to really do the work of daily making small but significant changes to our thought patterns, to the way we respond to ourselves and others, to the way we take care of ourselves. So if you want to join in on all the fun, please hit subscribe. I'm Jenna Thorani. I am a couples therapist and clinical counselor, and I will see you next time. Bye.